What is up guys, Morton here from SteamFirst.com with a review for Terrorhedron, a tower defense game developed by Dan Walters and released July 24th, 2014 on Steam for $10. Terrorhedron is a tower defense game, but it's more complicated than normal TDs. For starters, it's 3-dimensional, so it's pretty hard to get your towers positioned optimally, and on top of that, you can only build towers in certain spots. You can build additional platforms off the ones that are built into the level, but that costs gold, plus it only opens up a few additional spots to build off of. So it requires a lot of strategy to get the best towers built in the best locations to hit as many enemies as possible. The gameplay itself is fun, but there are some flaws. For starters, it takes a while to get used to the positioning of the platforms you can build off of. This isn't really a massive flaw because it's just a learning curve, but the tutorial they have really doesn't do a great job of showing how it works. But the worst part of the game by far is the fact that towers are locked behind your level. This means that when you start the game, you need to lose multiple times just to level up enough to be able to build better towers in order to progress, and it's really not fun knowing you'll lose until you get to a higher level. Everything is locked, upgrading your towers, different types of towers, the additional building spaces, they're all locked until you reach a certain level. This is incredibly frustrating, watching as the enemies get stronger but your towers don't. The only two reasons to do this would be either to artificially increase the difficulty, or to try and make it less complicated early on by limiting the number of choices you have. Neither of those make the game fun though, and that's kind of a problem. If you started playing this game and gave up after 10 minutes and never went back to it, I really wouldn't blame you. That being said, once you get through unlocking all the turrets, it's actually a lot of fun, but there's only 6 different stages and 7 towers, so there isn't a whole lot of variety. Another thing that's kind of weird is that there aren't different enemy types, it's all the same and every tower does full damage to everything, so you could just make a ton of whatever your favorite tower is and you'd probably be alright. Another feature that gets a lot of attention is the multiplayer. The idea is that you'll have multiple people on the same map, each building in a different location. It's a good idea in theory and would probably be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, every time I tried to join a multiplayer match, I got a network error message, and whenever I tried to host one, nobody joined, probably because they couldn't. So I'm guessing it doesn't work very well. Gameplay gets a 3 out of 5. It's not incredibly deep in terms of towers and things, but the way it works in 3 dimensions makes it pretty challenging, although frustrating at times. Also, there's a lot of difficulty modes, which is nice, but at the same time kind of annoying because there's no way you could possibly do a hard difficulty without first doing the easier ones and leveling up. Graphically, the game looks alright, but it's kind of boring. All the levels have the same white and grey landscape, and all the turrets you can build basically look identical as well. The best looking thing in the game is the enemies you kill, which are basically just different geometric shapes that change color the lower health they get. Once you figure out how many hits it takes to get through each shape, it's a pretty intuitive way to quickly figure out how close you are to completing a level. Unfortunately, it's just not very much to look at. Graphics get a 2.5 out of 5. The audio also gets pretty redundant after a while. The music doesn't have very much variety at all. There's a couple of tracks and they sound pretty similar. It isn't bad, it just isn't very exciting either. The sound for the turrets is kind of the same too, all the weapons sound very similar, but there is some difference. The turret with heavy splash has a louder sound than the turret that just shoots a bunch of fast shots, things like that, but they all still sound kind of alike. This doesn't matter that much because once you end up with like 50 turrets, all the sounds kind of just mesh together anyway, and it would probably sound really weird if all the turrets sounded vastly different. Sound gets a 3 out of 5. As for replayability, there's definitely a lot. There's quite a few achievements, although most of them are just for completing the stage on higher difficulty. But there are 6 stages and 5 difficulties each, so there's a lot to do if you want to complete them all. Plus the stages are pretty confusing with all their turns, so it'll take a while to figure out exactly where the best places are to put all your turrets for maximum efficiency. Basically, if you want to complete every stage on the hardest difficulty, it's going to take quite a few attempts. Replayability gets a 4 out of 5. The only thing it's missing is more complex achievements, because you'll get every achievement just by playing the game. Overall, Terrorhedron is a pretty solid tower defense once you unlock everything, and a very annoying and boring tower defense before that. The 3D aspect is innovative and enjoyable once you get the hang of it. The levels are fairly different and all the difficulties means there's plenty to do, and you'll need to practice and learn the best way to build each tower on every level. Multiplayer would probably be a lot of fun too if that ever ends up working at any point. Overall, Terrorhedron gets a 3 out of 5. It's not in depth in terms of towers, but the 3D element makes it relatively hard. The only major downside is it takes a while to get going. The first nearly hour will be you losing repeatedly waiting to unlock the towers and the upgrades required to continue.